Hey, what's going on, GameLeapers? This is Coach Eags, and in today's video, we're going to be going through the 10 champions who are going to be secretly OP and broken in the new 12-14 patch. So to know who these champions are, make sure, of course, you stick around for the whole video. And if you want to play any of these champions, guys, at the highest level, make sure you check out the GameLeap website. Link down below in the description and comment section. Some of the best challenger players and coaches from around the world. Well, we are uploading daily content for our subscribers, so get that exclusive access to our amazing library that will 100% help you improve and peak on the Rift in Season 12. So get signed up and let's get into the 10 secretly OP champs for 12-14. And just like our other recent countdowns, we're not really going to go in any particular order here. I'm just going to throw 10 champions at you, and maybe you can tell us who you think the most broken champion is going to be in the comment section. So first of all, let's start by talking about Teemo, who is actually getting some really big buffs to 12-14. So for Teemo, your mana regen per level is going up by 5. This means you're going to have more spam ability because you will have more blue stuff. So as far as your Q goes, your ultimate goes, this is going to be better. On top of this, your ultimate's range, not only is the range increasing at rank 1 and rank 2, so at level 6 and level 11, but its AP ratio is going up by 5%. So the more AP you have from the magic damage from your items that you buy, this is going to be very impactful, especially later in a game. And also your ultimate's mana cost is going down at rank 2 and rank 3. So at level 11 and then 16, well, at level 16, this is only costing 35 mana to throw out one of your shrooms, and you'll have a bunch of these to throw out. So Teemo, because of these buffs, has to be in this video. But another reason why Teemo is in here, well, that's because of all the changes to sustain. So next patch, we have so many nerfs coming into health potions, refillable potions, corrupting potions, also to second wind. So anyone against Teemo, because in the top lane, you're probably going to run second wind so you can sustain Teemo's poke and tick damage. Because this is nerfed, this means that Teemo indirectly gets buffed. And that's the same for pretty much any ranged champion in the top lane, because the enemy champions won't be able to withstand all of the poke, unlike now on 12-13. So Teemo is the first champion to think about. Now, someone else in the top lane who really might like 12-14, well, this is Quinn. And for Quinn, nothing is really changing in terms of items or buffs and nerfs. But like I said for Teemo, because the top lane is going to be better for ranged champions or champions who can poke the enemy champions, this means that for Quinn, those melee champions are going to hate playing against you. And because Quinn counters pretty much all of them, especially champions with any sort of engage, maybe like a Riven who might try to jump onto you, a Darius who can never really get to you because of your Volt, your E is such an amazing ability, and because of your good damage, especially if you're running something like Press the Attack with Ignite, it's going to make Quinn such a powerhouse. Just remember, guys, if you do hit level 6 on Quinn, don't just think you have to use it to the top lane. You can use it through mid out of base, through bot lane out of base, especially if the enemy top laner is already like 0-5 at 10 minutes. Don't worry too much about crushing your lane harder than you have to. If it's already crushed, try to win the rest of the map. So Quinn is another champion, just like Teemo, in the top lane who's going to be very good. Now let's switch it up. Let's move to the bot lane here and talk about, well, really the only AD carry on this list, this being Varus. So for Varus, your base attack damage going up by 3 from 59 to 62. This is a significant early game buff. And for Varus, because of the changes to sustain, because you're such a good lane champ, like essentially you are a lane bully, especially once you hit level 6, your ultimate, Chains of Corruption, it has so much power. And if we think about the supports who might be good next patch, so any champion who can maybe run Scorch, because this is getting buffed in terms of the damage. And remember, second wind, health potions, these are all getting nerfed. So any bot lane champion who is just trying to survive and get out of the laning phase against a champion like Varus, who might have maybe a Xerath next to him, who might have a Lux or a Karma next to him. Just think about how annoying and oppressive that lane's going to be. So Varus is really the only AD carry who's going to be secretly OP or broken in 12-14. And if we stay in the bot lane, guys, let's talk about a couple of supports here. So the first of these is Ashe. Now, why is Ashe here? Well, that's because Ashe, as a support, when you run Comet and the buff Scorch in 12-14, it's going to be better for you. And the funny thing is, we actually saw Carrier run Ashe today in a couple of T1's games. And it's kind of toxic because the cooldown you have with your ultimate, you can spam this so much in the mid to late game. And because of your early game poke, you can help with the priority, especially when you pair Ashe with someone like a Varus. Think about their 2 ultimates as well, and that's really why Ashe is so useful as well. Even if you don't do well during the laning phase, your Enchanted Crystal Arrow is so good for any team composition. Even if the rest of your team has 0 CC, land one of those arrows for the Yone to go in, for the Aurelia to land her ultimate. And if we really think about team compositions, think about Ashe with maybe a Zac or a Sejuani or a Talia, just like T1 and Faker played with Carrier on Ashe. So Ashe, because of the Scorch buff and because the bot bot lane meta is really going to change. It's going to be a lot better for poke champions. Ashe is on this countdown, just like Misfortune. And very similar to Ashe, you'll be running Comet with Scorch and an E-Max, of course. So using your Make It Rain to pressure the enemy champions, even if you play Misfortune as an AD carry, to be honest, pretty much the same concept. You'll be running the same rune page and maxing the same stuff, so your E first. So really it is the same. Maybe as a support Misfortune though, you might go Liandry's, but we've seen plenty of pros play Liandry's Anguish Misfortune with the tick damage, the burn damage, also with the ability haste you get from the mythic passive. I just think these champions, Misfortune, Ashe, anything with poke in the bot lane is going to be very good next patch, especially if you're playing them in higher relos, because you really can get the most out of them. Now let's head to the mid lane, guys, and talk about a couple of champions who are going to be broken in the mid lane in 12-14. So the first of these, this is Zoe. Now I understand that Zoe, it's probably suboptimal for you to run Scorch in your runes, because you really want to go Electrocute, and then as your secondary tree, you probably want to go Inspiration with Biscuits, and maybe Cosmic or Time Warp Tonic, or maybe you want to go Sorcery with Mana Flow Ban and Transcendence. Scorch isn't really that good, but because Zoe is one of the best poke champions in the entire game, not even in the early game, in the mid to late game, you are unreal. And in the early game, because against any ranged champion, even against any champion, Zoe has the best priority really out of anyone. You can easily get to level 2 first, as long as you queue the ranged minions to level 1, so charge that up over one of the walls or in the side lane brushes in the mid lane, use your Q on the backline minions in those ranged matchups, and you're good to go. You're guaranteed to hit level 2 first. And I understand that Zoe may be in lower elos, right? You're not going to do that well because, well, quite simply, players just don't know how to get the most out of Zoe and punish their opponents, especially if you're against champions like Zed and Yasuo and Yone. Even in higher elo, some of these matches are quite difficult, but the point is, next patch, because these champions are really going to struggle until level 6 and their late game power spikes, you have more time to crush them. But again, the key here is knowing how to crush them. This is why in higher reloads, I think these kind of poke-based champions are going to be a lot better, but they still will be better across the board. That's the point. So Zoe is the first mid laner to think about. The second is Vel'koz, and you could really substitute Vel'koz for a Lux maybe a Ziggs, but I don't really like Ziggs in the mid lane. I think Ziggs as an AP carry bot lane is better. Maybe you can sub him out for a Xerath, who I actually think is just going to be broken if you play him as a support or a mid laner. But Vel'koz, exactly the same kind of concept here. Because of your amazing range, you really are one of those artillery mages who's more than happy to sit back and clear waves and poke from afar. This is why you do so well against control mages, so stuff like Orianna, Syndra, because you outrange them, it's very difficult for them to do anything to you, and if they get too close, your ultimate will shred them. So Vel'koz, because of his poke damage, because you can run Scorch as well, so maybe if you're running Arcane Comet as your keystone, I just think this champion is going to be very underrated in the mid lane, because he really isn't picked that much, he's rarely banned. So if you want to play a champion pretty much all the time in Champ Select, you're not going to have to worry about Vel'koz getting picked or banned by the enemy team. War of the Worlds is definitely a champion you should put in your champion pool. Now, the only jungler I've put on this countdown, guys, well, it's a champion getting buffed in 12-14, which is always nice. This is Pantheon. So your Q's damage to monsters is going up by 35% to 105%. This means you can finally clear camps without taking an absolute age. So because your clear is going to be quicker, you can get to level 2 and actually make a play happen. Whether you have Flash or even Ghost might be an option, Pantheon is going to be deadly. Even if you want to invade the enemy jungler, if you're running a keystone like Press the Attack, you can destroy them. You have so much early game presence, and because of Pantheon's point and click stun, because of how useful a point and click stun is, it pretty much means that for any champion with a skill shot, as long as that player has their brain switched on, they're going to guarantee the skill shot. That's why you might see stuff like Renekton and Nidalee picked, Pantheon and Talia in the mid lane, like in my head at the moment, I'm thinking about combinations. That's one that could be really broken in 12-14. So if you guys want free LP, do your red buff at level 1 and just go gank a lane. Like, I'm not even joking, you will get first blood, you will get early kills, and snowball the game from there. So Pantheon is going to be a really fun jungler in 12-14, probably a little bit annoying to play against, but regardless, Pantheon is on this list. Now, the last two champions on this video, guys, these are actually top laners. Well, they're not really top laners, but I want you to play them in the top lane if you do pick them. So the first of these is Cassiopeia. Now, yes, you can play Cassio in the mid lane, but let's think about the mid lane, and let's think about a couple of those champions I just mentioned. We talked about Vel'koz. We talked about Zoe. Does Cassio do well into ranged champions like this? Terrible, right? Because you can never get to them. Cassio really loves champions who are shorter range, because then you can land your Q, you can land your E, and also against melee champions and assassins, your W cucks them so hard. So Cassio in the mid lane, I don't think it's going to be a great option, but in the top lane, because you're poke damage, because most of the time you're going to be going against melee champions, think about how oppressive you can be on this champion. Now, yes, you're probably not going to go Scorch, right? You're probably going to go Conqueror, so we might be missing out on a little bit of damage there, but if you even go something like Phase Rush, you can opt for Scorch, but just make sure, guys, you're going Presence of Mind in your secondary tree. So I think because of the sustain changes, just like I've talked about for Teemo Teemo and Quinn, Cassio is going to be extremely broken in the top lane and an amazing flex pick for those higher reloads. Now, the final champion to talk about here, guys, this is Karma. And whether you're playing Karma in the top lane, you can, of course, play her as a support, maybe even in the mid lane, but I think as a top laner and as a support, she's going to have so much value because she really is, especially in the bot lane, the best early game level 1 priority champion. Like, if we think about Karma with a Caitlyn, for example, oh my goodness, like this is just 100% priority, one of the most annoying lanes to play against. If we think about a Karma with a Varus, like I talked about before, exactly the same concept. Now, if you take her to the top lane, why is Karma good? Well, that's because she's a ranged champion, and with the new Scorch, which you can actually use in one of your rune pages, because you're probably going to be running Summonary as your keystone, so running Scorch in the sorcery tree, this is easy, and because these enemy champions won't be getting as much HP back after you poke them down, you're very annoying as well to play against in the top lane because of your kite with your E. Just make sure you're always saving your E when the enemy champion jumps onto you, and also your W. You never really want to be using this unless you have kill pressure, you think you can kill them, or unless you're getting ganked. You can always consider as well putting 2 points in your Q at level 3 if you know you're not going to get ganked, the enemy jungler might show on the bot side of the map. And I also think if you play Karma in the top lane, guys, running Flash and Ghost is actually better because you don't really need TP. You get back to lane very quickly, and yes, TP is useful, I understand it has its perks like any summoner spell, but I just think Ghost is better. It's going to be very hard to kill you, and you have the chase potential and also kill potential to really pressure the enemy champion. Even in late game team fights, this is going to be useful. So very interesting picks here in this video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Let us know by leaving a like down below. Any questions, thoughts, leave them in the comment section, and until tomorrow's daily season 12 upload, this has been Coach E. Peace.